On May 18th, 2026, President Donald Trump posted on Truth Social. The message was short. It said, "For Iran, the clock is ticking, and they better get moving, fast, or there won't be anything left of them." Hours earlier, the same day, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi posted a video to his Telegram channel. In it, he told state television that all countries now acknowledge that the Islamic Republic of Iran was the victor in this war. Iran was able to prevent its enemies from achieving their objectives and succeeded in imposing its will. From now on, Iran must be viewed differently, as a power capable of confronting the world's greatest powers. Same day, same conflict. Two completely different realities. One of them is wrong. Or perhaps, and this is what makes this moment genuinely important, neither of them is telling you the complete picture. Let's start with Trump. His Truth Social post on May 18th was not the first deadline he has set for Iran. It was not the second. It was not even close to the 10th. Since the ceasefire of April 8th, Trump has set deadlines that passed without consequence, posted warnings that were followed by extensions, and threatened attacks that were paused at the last minute. May 18th was not different. On that same day, Trump had planned a military strike on Iran. The public did not know about it. The planning was done. The order was ready. Then the leaders of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates called him and asked him to hold off, to allow time for what they described as serious negotiations. Iran had submitted a revised proposal through mediator Pakistan. Trump suspended the attack. Then he posted that the clock was ticking. A Pakistani source speaking to Reuters described the situation plainly. "We don't have much time," the source said. "Both sides keep changing their goalposts." This is what makes May 18th different from every previous deadline. Three Gulf states, the countries geographically closest to this conflict, whose economies are most directly damaged by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, who have the most to lose from a resumption of major combat operations, called the American president on the day he was planning to strike and asked him not to. And he listened. The clock may be ticking, but the people closest to the explosion are asking him not to push the button. Now Araghchi. His victory declaration on May 18th requires a specific question. What were the objectives of each side and which side achieved them? The United States and Israel entered this conflict on February 28th with stated objectives: destroy Iran's ballistic missile capabilities, dismantle its navy, sever support for armed proxies across the region, ensure Iran never obtained a nuclear weapon. A 15-point proposal delivered in late March went further, demanding conditions that amounted to the dismantlement of the Islamic Republic's strategic position entirely. None of those objectives have been fully achieved. Instead of the decisive victory that was sought after the killing of Iran's supreme leader and his top commanders in the opening strikes, the war devolved into something nobody planned for: a stalemate, a naval standoff in the Strait of Hormuz, a ceasefire that has been extended 4 times and violated by both sides, a negotiation that has produced one unsigned page after 80 days of conflict. Iran's objectives were different from the beginning: survive, prevent the destruction of the Islamic Republic as a governing institution, maintain leverage, keep the Strait of Hormuz as a card to play, draw in China and Russia as guarantors of any eventual agreement. On those objectives, Iran is doing better. But here's the contradiction Araghchi did not address in his Telegram video. On the same day he declared victory, speaking at a summit in New Delhi, he described the ceasefire as shaky. He said Iran cannot trust the Americans at all. He called the lack of trust the main obstacle to any diplomatic effort. He said that every day brings a different message, sometimes even two different messages in a single day, which deepens mistrust. A man who has genuinely won a war does not need to negotiate from Islamabad. He does not describe the peace as shaky. He does not say his country cannot trust the side it has defeated. A country that has won does not have 1,600 ships anchored outside its main waterway because that waterway is still under dispute. A country that has won does not have its citizens learning to use rifles from booths in the central business district of its capital. Both of those things were documented on May 17th and 18th. In Tehran's Haftatir Square, the central business district, Members of Iran's armed forces were photographed teaching civilians to use assault rifles at booths set up in the street. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was conducting military exercises in Tehran province described as aimed at increasing combat capabilities. That is not what winning looks like. What it actually looks like is something more complicated than either side's public statements will admit. Iran's deputy speaker of parliament gave away the most honest thing said by any Iranian official in this entire conflict when he called the Strait of Hormuz, and I'm quoting him directly here, Iran's nuclear weapon. What makes that statement remarkable is what it admits. Iran stumbled into its most powerful card almost by accident. The actual closure of the Strait of Hormuz was as much a surprise to Tehran as it was to the rest of the world. Having seen their primary deterrence, the missile programs, the network of regional proxies, the decades of asymmetric strategy, fail to prevent direct conflict with the United States and Israel, the Islamic Republic found something they had not fully planned for: a different kind of power. The ability to disrupt one-fifth of the world's oil supply and make it someone else's problem to solve. One analyst described it precisely. Iranians are also surprised, they said. The deterrence they didn't count on that much became their most valuable card. Now they are tying the future security of Iran to the management of Hormuz. That shift in doctrine produced the triumphalism in Tehran that Arakchi's declaration represents. If you believe your weakest card turned out to be your strongest, you feel as though you discovered something. You feel as though you won something. The danger is that this feeling leads a leadership to overestimate its position in the negotiations that are still ongoing and still unresolved. An analyst at King's College London put the current state of the talks in terms that cut through both sides' public postures. Washington, he said, has accepted that the simultaneous resolution of the war, Hormuz, and the nuclear file in one final package is not currently feasible. That is a significant concession that has not been announced by either side. The United States went into this conflict wanting everything resolved at once: nuclear program, missiles, proxies, Hormuz, in a single comprehensive deal. Iran refused. Iran proposed settling Hormuz first and the nuclear file later in a phased approach. The United States is now discussing exactly that phased approach. On that specific point, Arakchi is not entirely wrong to claim something. Iran's negotiating position has shifted the shape of the eventual deal. That is real. But it is not the same as winning. Here are the numbers that neither the victory declaration nor the ticking clock post addressed on May 18th. 3,468 Iranians have been killed in United States and Israeli strikes since February 28th. Iran's supreme leader was assassinated in the opening hours of the conflict. His top commanders died alongside him. The country's nuclear facilities at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan were destroyed by American B-2 bombers. Shipping through the Strait of Hormuz remains at an effective standstill. Oil prices have reached $107 a barrel. American gasoline prices are at $4.11 a gallon, a number that affects every American voter whose support Trump needs. The Harvard Kennedy School projects the total cost of this conflict to American taxpayers at more than $1 trillion over its full duration. The Pentagon has already spent $29 billion in direct military expenditure. Iran's economy was heavily sanctioned before the war began. The Hormuz closure, through which Iranian imports and exports also flow, has made Iran's own economic situation worse, not better. The United Nations Development Program projected in March 2026 that Iran's economic challenges will continue regardless of how the conflict ends. A country that has won a war does not have civilians learning to load rifles in its capital's business district. A country that has won does not have its foreign minister describing the peace as shaky from a summit in a third country. A country that has won is not still waiting for the naval blockade on its ports to be lifted. Trump on May 18th said the clock is ticking and they better get moving fast or there won't be anything left of them. Arakchi on May 18th said all countries now acknowledge that the Islamic Republic of Iran was the victor in this war. Both of these statements were made on the same day about the same conflict by men whose governments are still sending proposals through a Pakistani intermediary because they have not resolved enough to talk directly. Trump's clock has been ticking since April 8th. It has appeared to run out several times. The attack planned for May 18th was called off within the same hour that the post declaring the clock was ticking was published. The ceasefire that was supposed to last 2 weeks has now been extended 4 times. Aragchi's victory was claimed on the day he described the ceasefire as shaky from New Delhi, while Iran's ports remain blockaded and the negotiations remain unresolved. The most honest statement made by any party on May 18th came from the Pakistani source, speaking to Reuters, who said simply, "We don't have much time, and both sides keep changing their goalposts." That is the actual situation on the ground. Not a victory, not a ticking clock that is about to stop. Two governments that both need a deal, neither of which will say so publicly, with a mediator standing between them who is running out of patience. The clock is ticking for both of them.